All right, we are streaming and ready to go.
All ready. I would like to call the hearing to order at this point in time. It's 4:04 p.m. on May 20th, 2021. Could you call the roll, please?
Sure. Mr. Chapelier,
Here.
Mr. Brubaker,
Here.
thank you. Mr. Gupta, I'm not sure if he joined or not. Okay, Mr. Herskowitz,
Here.
thank you. Mr. Harper,
Here.
thank you. Welcome. Mr. Paul,
Here.
thank you. Mr. Sellers,
Here.
thank you. And Mr. Smithers,
Here.
thank you. We have a quorum.
All righty. Thank you. First off, I would like to welcome a new panel member, a Scott Harper from Plain Township. Could we bring your picture up so everybody can see him? I'm not seeing him on my screen, so I assume he's there. I heard him.
He is broadcast.
Yes.
Sir, welcome.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Chapelier, if I could just interrupt you for just a second. I
Sure.
apologize. I forgot to note, just because we do have a full agenda tonight, that we have 7 panel members in attendance. We need 5 to conduct business. So if we get to a point where anyone has to leave for whatever reason, please give us a heads up. Maybe if you could give us 10 minutes so we can kind of decide which direction we want to go in, whether it's time to take a vote or if something needs continued. We don't want to get to a vote and find out that we only have 4 people. That would be very bad. So if you could just let us know, that would be wonderful. Thank you.
Okay, another question I have, is there any length of time that public speakers can talk for the city of New Albany from the outside, if they want to address the panel?
Go ahead, Steve. You can go ahead.
Like I said, we typically haven't limited the amount of time the public can speak. I know the bylaws for the Accord does say that the chairperson does have the ability to limit people. It says they may do it if they so deem it necessary. I think to like 3 or 5 minutes per speaker. Historically, I don't think we've used that before. We've just tried to limit it to new comments or suggestions in order to avoid duplication of comments. But we always try to give everybody an opportunity to speak.
Okay, I just wanted to check on that before we got going and had to change horses midstream. Okay, next item is I need a motion to approve the minutes of the previous hearing.
Ralph Smithers, so moved.
Second. Dave Paul.
Okay, could you call the roll, please?
Yes.
Oh,
Mr. Chapelier?
yes. I need to see if there's any previous comments.
Yes, if there was any further discussion on the minutes, or if anyone had any comments.
Okay, were there any further comments on the minutes of the last meeting? Then doesn't sound like it. Okay, could you call the roll, please, on the minutes?
Yes. Mr. Chapelier?
Yes.
Mr. Brubaker?
Yes.
Mr. Herskowitz?
Yes.
Mr. Harper, I'm not going to call your name since you weren't there. Mr. Paul?
Yes.
Mr. Sellers?
Yes.
And Mr. Smithers?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, thank you.
I have a quick question. Is Scott Harper taking Kim Burton's place? Or is
No, he is with
Plain Township? Okay. But
Yes,
Kim's still.
Mr. Lachey.
Oh, Mr. Okay.
Yeah, I think
Yeah, Kim is on vacation.
I
Okay.
believe he reached the maximum number of terms. I think it's a maximum of 4 terms you can serve, and so I think he served as many as he could. So
Oh.
that's great. Sorry to see him go, but happy to
Right.
see Scott too.
Well, I know Scott. I've worked with Scott previously, so welcome aboard, Scott.
Thanks, Todd. Good to see you.
You too.
Okay, any further discussion on that part? Okay, let's, is there any old business that needs to be discussed at this point in time?
Not
Okay,
from
we'll move
Columbus.
Pardon?
Not from Columbus.
Okay. Well, then we'll move on to the new business. And the first item up for review is the Woodhaven District Rezoning, ZC 152021.
Great. Thanks, Mr. Chevalier.
Yes.
Great. I think Steve is going to share our presentation. So you guys just have to bear with us here as we kind of tag team this a little bit. So this application is for review and action regarding a rezoning application to rezone approximately 38 acres from ag to IPUD. So before we get started, just for those listening at home and who may be unfamiliar with this process, I want to take a second and explain a couple of different entitlement process things that are related to these types of applications. So for a rezoning, the application starts here at the Rocky Fork-Blacklick Accord, and the RFBA is an advisory board that makes a recommendation to New Albany Planning Commission. Then from there, the application goes to the New Albany Planning Commission, who review and make a recommendation to City Council. And City Council is the final body that takes action on the actual rezoning. After the rezoning, the applicant for a PUD development, they have to return to the Planning Commission for review and approval of a final development plan application. This is where we get into more details about traffic, landscaping, architecture. Once we get to the Planning Commission level and City Council level, all neighbors who live within 200 feet of this rezoning area will be mailed, telling them about the hearing dates and how to participate. And the information and agendas will also be available on our website. Steve, you go to the next slide. So back to this specific application. So this site is approximately 38 acres in size prior to a right-of-way dedication. This is located at the southwest corner of Walnut Street and Beevelheimer Road. To help orient everyone, the New Albany Public Service Department and the Rocky Fork Metro Park are located just north of the site, and the Upper Clarington subdivisions are located directly west of it. Go to the next slide, Steve. The proposed rezoning will allow for the development of a new 60-lot mixed generational subdivision with 38 traditional single-family lots and 22 age-restricted lots. The proposed density is 1.68 units on approximately 38 acres prior to right-of-way dedications. I do want to point out that there's an existing lot along Walnut Street that will be rezoned as part of this process. And according to the preliminary development plan, that lot will be split, and there'll be a number of 2 lots along this roadway. The subdivision does have 2 vehicular connections, one along Beevelheimer Road, and one will utilize an existing stub street in the Upper Clarington neighborhood, which is Torrance Way. It's not shown on your screen, but if you can look at the southern portion of the zoning district, you'll see that they're stubbing a street that will eventually connect into the existing Steeplechase Lane, the Millbrook subdivision, if and when the properties to the south should develop. Both Walnut Street and Beevelheimer Road are identified in the Accord plan as rural roadways, and the applicant is providing a 250-foot setback along these roadways from the center line, which is sensitive to the rural character of this area. Next slide, Steve. The applicant is meeting an important Accord recommendation to provide strong pedestrian connectivity on the site by providing leisure trail connections along Walnut and Beavelheimer Road that set the stage to provide connectivity to the Metro Park, which is just north of this site. The applicant is also providing an internal pedestrian connection, providing internal pedestrian connections with 5-foot sidewalks, as you see outlined in red here. Next slide, Steve. This project meets the Accord's architectural standards by providing building designs based on traditional American architectural styles. The city architect has reviewed the application and is supportive of the proposed home elevations. The city architect states that the age-restricted home massing is complementary to the craftsman style of architecture, which is being employed, and is why it is appropriate in this case. The site plan and text also demonstrate the applicant's commitment to not back homes onto open space or road, meeting a crucial planning principle found in the Accord and engaged in Albany strategic plan. Go to the next one, Steve. The site is located in the future residential land use district of both the Accord and engaged New Albany plan, which matches the desired rezoning use. If you could go one more down, Steve. Overall, staff is supportive of the rezoning application. The street network, oops, I'm sorry, Steve, one more. I apologize. My apologies. Overall, staff is supportive of the rezoning application. The street network, rural setbacks, open space, and layout are very desirable from a site planning perspective. The application meets many of the planning principles that are important to the city of New Albany, including not backing homes onto open space, maintaining the rural character of roadways, and using complementary styles of architecture that meet the New Albany DGRs. Additionally, the applicant exceeds the 30% open space recommendation of the Accord plan by providing nearly 32% open space on the site. The proposed density of 1.68 units per acre does exceed the Accord engaged in New Albany recommendation, and staff does recommend this density be offset in some manner. The engaged New Albany plan states that density can be offset by paying a fee in lieu by purchasing and deed restricting land within the Metro Park growth area. And the applicant is currently working with city staff to offset density in this manner. Ultimately, the appropriateness of this fee in lieu will be determined by City Council. While the applicant does exceed this density recommendation, they are providing a unique mixed generational subdivision where 22 lots will be 100% age restricted, which is a concept that was not around when the Accord plan was created. The application is meeting a vast majority of the Accord development standards, scoring a 96% on the report card, and staff recommends approval of the application. Thank you.
All righty, are there any questions from the panel at this point?
I have a couple questions. So on the age restricted, I read, is it somebody in the resident has to be 55 and over? Is that correct? Is that?
Yes, that is correct.
So just does that and I know there's some age restricted housing that's already in the links. Is it similar to what's already in? They already have. Is it a similar proposal basically, as far as age restriction?
Yeah, so the base 55 and older requirements is 80% of homes have to have somebody 55 and older. In this instant, the applicant is committing to make 100% of the homes have at least one resident that is 55 years and older or older.
And it doesn't have to be the owner. It doesn't have just somebody living in the house. Is that how does that work?
I believe it has to be a permanent resident that is in the facility or living at the home.
Okay. And that's 22 of the homes are going to be 100% 55. Somebody in the home has to be 55 and over.
That's correct. And those are the homes that are shown in yellow on the site plan here.
Okay.
And if I could just follow on that question, that doesn't preclude, for example, the presence of grandchildren at home or something along those lines. Is that right?
Yeah, so my understanding is that, grandkids can come and visit, and spend time with their grandparents, and certainly there's no restrictions as far as like visitors coming and going like you normally would. Just it puts restrictions, and there's like federal guidance on this that the subdivision has to adhere to, that will be both a zoning commitment and a deed restriction. So it's sort of a belt and suspenders approach the city has taken, so that if it does come into question, if it's whether or not a person is a permanent resident, it can be enforced both through the zoning standpoint and through the federal regulations.
Thank you.
How is that managed? I mean, who monitors that? Who manages that?
Yeah, so I believe it's set up so that the HOA takes management and maintains the age restriction. And I'll let the applicant correct me if that's wrong, but I believe that's my understanding of the ongoing. And then as far as code enforcement goes, that's complaint based. So if we did receive a complaint, then we would investigate that as we would a normal code enforcement complaint and take any action if necessary.
And Steve, just to follow up on that, I mean, that basically doesn't preclude that, say like what we had with like an EPCON development where it's 100%, nobody, no school age children would come from those addresses. That doesn't preclude any type of attendance to the school system in the age restricted homes.
So it's been done several different ways in New Albany. I believe the ones in the links is just the typical age restriction. So 80% of the homes have to have a permanent resident 55 years and older. Again, in this case, they're committing to 100% of the homes have to have somebody 55 and older. In EPCON's case, they committed to 100% of the homes be 55 and older. And they also committed to not allowing any permanent residents under the age of 21. And then the other recent example we have is Pulte Homes, which is Nottingham Trace. And in that instance, they just did the normal age restriction of 80% of the homes have to have at least one person 55 years and older in it. So yeah, there's nothing without like an additional restriction. It's purely just regulates that it has to have somebody 55 years and older as a primary resident in the household. Okay,
so Pulte, I guess I misunderstood that, because I thought Pulte was also they could only had to be they were restricted with the amount of children going to school system out of that subdivision, but that's not the case.
No, it's not the case. It's simply just the having the 55-year and older individual in a household for 80% of the homes. Yeah, okay. In compliance with the federal regulations.
Okay. So we have 22 age restricted and 28 just no restrictions. Is that correct? Homes?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay. Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Alrighty, any other questions before we move on to the applicants?
Oh, can I ask one? So the density offset, you mentioned it was it could be with a fee and or land set aside in another area of some sort, and that's to be determined, correct?
Yeah, so that comes from our recently adopted Engage New Albany strategic plan. Mm-hmm. And so it has been done. It hasn't been in a policy document, but it has been something that's been done for other subdivisions, including the one to the south, Millbrook Farms. So our strategic plan does recommend, where it does exceed density, that the applicant does have, or could have the ability to either pay a fee in lieu or to purchase other land to offset that density, either in the park zone to help grow and proliferate the metro park, or to, ideally find another piece of property in the school district.
Okay.
But this will be the first of its kind to look at a fee in lieu. And so we've been working with the Metro Parks and the applicant to find what that fee in lieu amount would be to present that to our city council.
Okay, thanks.
All right, thank you. At this point, I'd like to ask the applicant if they would like to give us their presentation.
Absolutely. Thank you. My name is Linda Maneri. I'm with EMH&T. We prepared this package on behalf of Alto Real Estate. John Joffrey and Patrick Fisher are also on the line. I don't think that they'll speak this evening. Larry Canini is also my cohort here this evening. He is our development consultant working with us on this project. And we also have Brandon Bally. He's COO with Bob Webb Homes. Bob Webb will be the group that actually constructs these homes, and their architecture is what you see in the package this evening. I think the staff report is very thorough and basically hits most of the high points. I think we feel really good about this project. It's a little unique in terms of what you find in New Albany, where you have a new development coming in. We're annexing and rezoning, and it's a multi-generational. So we've got two components here, as Chris mentioned. We've got our single-family component, which is kind of this lighter green lots that are kind of in the north portion of the site, and then our age-restricted lots, which are this little bit lighter yellow. One of the things as we kind of went through this plan, we're giving, to be consistent with kind of what's happening along these rural corridors, the 250-foot setback, even though the engaged plan only requires, I believe, 185 feet. We're maintaining one of the existing homes. It's up here along Walnut Road. It's numbered as Lot 1 on the plan, and the house that you see there is the house as it is right now. That will be maintained. One of the other things that we thought pretty long and hard about was trying to do some transition from the large lot homes that are just to the west of us. So we're placing another lot along Walnut Road just to the west of Lot 1, east of these three homes here that face out onto Walnut. So you also see this 250-foot setback, which I mentioned. It actually extends down to the south property line. And I believe on the plan that Chris showed, which shows a little zoom out, that would align eventually with the 250 feet south in Millbrook. And Larry was part of that development as well. We're providing more open space than I think what's required in New Albany, as well as in the Accord document, an acre or two more. Connections are real strong in terms of this plan. We're connecting into Torrance Way, which is in Upper Clarington to the west of us, and creating one access point out onto Belveheimer Road. The lot layout is all interconnected streets within our single family portion, and then a small loop street down here in our empty nester simplified living is what they're branded as in the web group as well. So that kind of gives you a general overview of the plan. Lot sizes are fairly consistent with what's in Upper Clarington. We've got primarily 80s and a little bit larger up here in our single family area. That's the traditional homes. And then a 57-foot wide lot, which accommodates our craftsman kind of architecture that we're going to build down here in our age-restricted area. The thing that we think is unique about this is, you know, we can have our families kind of up north and grandparents down below, and interconnected with leisure trail, walking paths, sidewalks, etc. The other thing that is really unique about this site, it's kind of that corner that's left out there that will now be in New Albany and kind of tie everything together. We've got Metro Park up to the upper left here, Belveheimer Park to the right. We're extending the leisure paths along both of our frontages. We'll end up eventually with the properties to the south. Hopefully at some point that'll connect to the leisure paths in Millbrook as well. So connectivity in terms of streets, connectivity in terms of walking paths, open space, just a really nice way to kind of finish off this particular corner within the city. Larry, do you have anything to add?
No, just to Mr. Brubaker's comment about the empty nester age restricted product. Bear in mind that product, and Brandon from Webb can chime in, but that product's really being geared obviously towards, empty nesters and elderly folks. So the product itself will not lend itself to, a family oriented type use. So from a school standpoint or impact on the schools, though this product price point will be significant and will easily support the financial burden of a student, the product's not really geared towards that. So, and again, it's just 22 of the units. So to Linda's point, we were trying to create something that provides that transitional for the folks that are looking to downsize, but yet also eventually be near their own families with their own grandkids. I think when you think about New Albany and all of us that have been here for years, there's really no place that occurs in other than really Market Street with Keswick condos and then all the residential within the country club community. So we're excited to be able to bring something like that here to this area. And as Linda said, really just kind of close off and tie everything together. The other question about the density capacity that we've done here, or the park fee, we'd given thought to considering looking for alternate land that could be restricted. But to be honest with you, with where this is located, it only makes sense for us to help enhance Metro Park because of that corridor north of Walnut. And it really is designed to be an amenity to our community. Metro Parks is. So we really feel that that's the obvious thing to do is to create the fee in lieu of, to help expand Metro Parks, which would help obviously our residents someday as that continues to grow. Other than that, the connection to Millbrook, which I developed, we had always hoped to maybe make the actual connection happen, but unfortunately with the flag lot that sits just to the south of our proposed project, along with the single family house out on Bevelheimer, I made numerous attempts to try to acquire them both. The flag lot is a significantly large and expensive home. The one up front is more of a rural ranch home, and maybe someday it'll occur, but I'm glad that we've at least made the efforts to create the connectivity if that ever is able to happen. So that had always been my goal with Millbrook when I developed it. So other than that, if you have any other questions for Linda and I, we're happy to answer.
Okay, I'll open it up now to the panel for questions. And I'll start with myself first. And it's more of a comment than a question, but I see how you've lined up the access to Bevelheimer Road with the long driveway with the house setting way back, which I certainly appreciate. But on the other hand, if I were to purchase lot number 52 with the entire complex running in and out of there after hours with their headlights on flashing through my living room, I might not like it as well. My thought is, a quick suggestion would be to make that connector a slight S to line up with the northern access point for the age homes, and that way it would prevent it, and that way you could put a little buffer, maybe a mound or some additional trees or something like that to prevent all that dense traffic coming right straight in at one or two lots. That's just my only comment I have on it. Other than that, I think it looks pretty well, and you've gotten fairly high marks on the report card. So with that being said, are there any other panel members that have a comment at this point?
Mr. Chapelier, can I answer
Yes.
your comment just so you
Sure.
understand why Linda and I chose to do that? The driveway that we are aligning with, the driveway to the east there, that is a rather large property. That's the Smuckers property. Mm-hmm. And some of you might recall some of the history with that, but it is about 17 acres. It's a rather large tract, single family home on it with a barn. I think it was a sports barn at one time that many in the township remember the storyline there. So really, I think we saw it not as an opportunity, but honestly as kind of a proactive way to assume that from an engineering standpoint, and I know Mr. Herskowitz is on the line, but generally they like us to do alignments like that. And that wasn't our initial intent, but we did go with that. based on the fact that we assume that's what engineering would want, so that at some point when that Smucker piece would develop, which would most likely develop in a similar vein as ours, there would be a safe sightline and visibility for cars entering in and out of ours and that future development. But we would be open to moving that if staff felt that was a good recommendation that you said. And it's really also a matter of us just making sure that the traffic patterns are ones that keep the traffic at a minimal speed, because obviously we know we're going to get some traffic coming from Torrance Way now potentially, and we were trying to just limit any kind of long stretches of straight line roadway so that we could make sure that traffic moved at a safe pace and not create any any shortcuts for folks to use through our neighborhood and then through Clariton. So in essence, but thank you for the comment. We appreciate that.
Yeah, I was just trying to think how it would, help the sale of that lot number 52 there. When you have 55 lots, say everybody's got a couple of cars, and coming and going, and to put it offset a little bit, that way you could add some more greenery in there in front of that particular lot, or those two lots there at the end. I think would make I think it would help you.
Yeah, we'll be happy to study that ourselves, and obviously study that with staff and the consulting.
I don't think that's a deal killer by any stretch of the imagination. It just
right.
The first thing I noticed that I thought, gee, that could be pretty simply done and not affect much at all.
Thank you.
All right. Are there any other panel members that have any comments, any questions?
Yeah, this is Jay, Mike, and
yes,
we reviewed the preliminary development plan recently, and there is going to be a traffic study, so perhaps your suggestion can be considered.
Okay. Any other comments from staff?
I have a question, Mike. This is Todd. Hey, the properties to the south of this, is that still zoned agricultural also?
I don't think they are. Could staff help me on that?
Yeah, I can't answer that either, Mr. Brubaker. Stephen or Chris?
So the properties immediately to the south of this subdivision, I believe, are still in a township. They're not annexed yet into the city of New Albany.
I guess my question is, I'm wondering about the lots aligning the southern boundary. They abut up to that property, and the road stubs into that property. I guess I was just interested in what the future development of that area is going to be.
Mr. Brubaker, when I was doing Millbrook and we were looking to work with this site, again, I approached both those neighbors. Actually, the rear property, the larger of the two, the flag lot, those folks sold a couple years ago, and there's a new resident there, so I did not have any conversations with them. And the real stumbling block actually was not those folks. It was the gal that lives in the front house, the ranch house there. And actually what's odd is there's a semi-tractor trailer parked in that driveway on a regular basis. So I don't know, obviously the township may not have any code violation to that, but if it ever did come into the city, the tractor trailer would be an issue. But she was the one that I had the difficulty with, and we even had proposed buying an easement from her so that we would just simply be able to put a leisure trail through it and then the street, and she wouldn't do it. So it was definitely a roadblock. So, okay. But yes, that's been an issue and may stay that way for some time.
Okay, Larry, thanks for the input.
Mm-hmm.
My only comment is that my wife has been observing your presentation as well, and she wants me to buy the house in the upper left of the samples you showed of homes. So the Bob Webb home.
Well, we'd ask you to pick a lot right now then, because we're hoping they'll go quickly. So I'll put you in touch with Brandon, and you can choose whatever lot you like. And we'll name a street after you if you like, because we're going to struggle with street names as well. So any recommendations there by the committee would be much appreciated.
Thank you.
Okay, is that all the questions from the staff at this point? Okay, next, I'd like to ask the staff if there are any members of the public who have requested to speak. The paper I have indicated that there were two that were received as of yesterday. So, are either one of those people present?
Stephanie, I don't think I received anything for this application specifically. Did you?
No.
Oh, okay. Well, then we'll try it again on the next one. Thanks, Stephanie.
Hey, Larry.
Okay.
Larry?
Yeah.
I had a quick
Yes.
question. I know we were working on the park. Obviously, you donated the property up where the park is currently and so forth. And there was a lot of, and when that was being developed, this area tended to have a lot of water, or was starting to have some water issues way back when, you know, so because of the change in the grades and things like that. So, but I assume you've worked all that out.
Yeah. Keep in mind, actually, before we were in contract, the county came in and did some work on Bevelheimer in conjunction with the property owner, Mr. Holcher.
Yeah.
And so we obviously, and to the city's credit, there's significant requirements now in applications that stormwater be studied. And we have done all that, but fortunately, a lot of it was aided by what was already done by the county. So we've done extensive hydraulic studies here and stormwater management studies, and Linda's team has a whole file on it. But yes, we're aware of it. And
that was many years ago. So I'm assuming things have changed.
Yeah, for the better.
I do have another quick question on the pond. How deep of a pond are you anticipating?
I'm going to let Linda answer that because she has those files in front of her. I do not.
Okay.
Well,
Linda,
I actually don't, but I'm assuming that it'll probably be at least 6 feet deep. We'll have the normal freeboard on it and safety shelf around the perimeter. So our folks have studied that in quite a bit of detail.
Okay, I was just curious on that aspect of it, because that could take care of a lot of your water problems in that area.
Yeah.
Alrighty.
Yes, we've looked at the stormwater here extensively. We do know that a lot comes across that from that northeast area into the system, as Larry talked about. It's been upgraded. It's a ditch. We're picking all that up, kind of reworking it through here into the pond, and then we'll have a weir at the end of it, which will outlet into the ditch. We'll leave the southern part of this ditch, and then you can see kind of in this lower part of the picture where it'll pick up into this other ditch feature, which then goes into a stream, and then that goes kind of cuts through Millbrook and continues on through and hits Sugar Run. So it is part of a larger system, and it all drains kind of south and west.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for that.
This is Jay. Linda, that brings up a point. Will there be any pedestrian access south of the pond and through the stream corridor protection zone of Millbrook and eventually connects to Upper Clarendon? Aren't there paths back there where people can enjoy the stream side?
Jay,
Larry, do you have paths?
Yeah, Jay, I don't have it in front of me, but I think most of what we did at Millbrook, the stream, if you remember, Sugar Run, ran west to east, and then under Bevelheimer. I think we ran a path, leisure path, west to east, and then the southern cul-de-sac, if I remember, and maybe Stephen can pull it up if there's a bigger aerial. I think we ran that around the pond actually, but I don't, yeah, there it is. So you can see it's actually between the cul-de-sacs, the path is, and we connected it to Upper Clarendon just above the patio homes that Mr. Brubaker mentioned. Because I remember we had to get an easement to make that connection. So it's really more dissecting the two cul-de-sacs versus kind of following any path. But yes, Jay, I mean, we're talking about potentially looking at doing a leisure trail around the pond, but we're not far enough along yet to see if that really makes sense or if we better serve to keep the leisure trails more internal.
Yeah, or even along the north side of the pond. I mean, we're getting, you know, we got the weir down there. We still have part of the ditch, so we'd have to, you know, cross over or fill some more of the ditch. So I think we'd like to keep it kind of north, but as Larry said, when we get into a little more detail on this, we will take a look at that.
Because the other thing we're trying to do is, as you can see by the screen now, you've got a pretty significant tree line all continually on the west boundary. And a lot of that tree line also extends into the rear yards of the Upper Clarendon residences. And then of course you've got the southern boundary as well. So we're really trying to, and we've got some preservation zones already dictated in the plat or in the plan. So that's kind of been imperative that we don't want to start trying to put anything in those areas. And we've even designed sanitary services accordingly so that we can preserve those as well.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Is there any further discussion on on this hearing?
None here.
Anybody? Okay. Well, if we've had the discussion, is the panel ready to ask for a motion on this case?
Ralph Smithers, I'd like to make a motion for approval.
Okay, is there a second?
This is Kyle, I second.
All righty. Any further discussion? All right. I'm sorry? Was there a further discussion? Okay. If no discussion, ask staff to call the roll.
Chris, you want me to call the roll for this as well?
Yeah, if you don't mind.
Sure. All right. Mr. Chapelier?
Yes.
Mr. Brubaker?
Yes.
Yes.
Mr. Herskowitz?
Yes.
Mr. Harper?
Yes.
Mr. Paul?
Yes.
Mr. Sellers?
Yes.
And Mr. Smithers?
Yes.
Motion carries.
All righty. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Commission. And also want to say hello to Bill Resch because I think he's listening and I just want to say hello to him. I haven't talked to him in a while. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All righty. Does anybody want or need to take a 3-minute intermission? If not, we'll go on with the next one. Okay. Our other item for this evening is the North New Albany District Rezoning, ZC 43 2021. If staff could give us their input on this one, we'll get started on it. Thank you.
Perfect, thank you. So this application is for review and action regarding a rezoning. I believe it's just over 30 acres. It's at the southwest and southeast corners of Beebleheimer and not Beebleheimer, State Route 605 and College Road. Just in case anybody wasn't listening, maybe on YouTube, just want to quickly go over the rezoning public process. We are here at the Rocky Fork-Blacklick Accord, who makes, on the rezoning side of it, they make a recommendation to the New Albany Planning Commission. The New Albany Planning Commission then reviews the application and makes a recommendation to City Council. And then City Council takes final action on the rezoning application. Once we get to the Planning Commission stage and City Council stage, all neighbors within 200 feet of the property of the zoning district boundaries will be notified, telling them about hearing dates and the ways that they can participate, and the information will also be available on our website. After the property is rezoned, if it's approved by City Council, The applicant, due to the PUD rezoning classification, will have to return to the Planning Commission for a review of a final development plan. That's when we get into the more nitty-gritty details about traffic, landscaping, what the architecture is going to look like. That comes after the rezoning portion. Steve, if you go to the next. All right, so this is the boundaries of the land that is being proposed to be rezoned. So this is at the intersection of Central College Road that kind of bisects the page going east-west. And then the major north-south road is State Route 605. So some of the surrounding businesses, just to help orient everyone, the old Discover building is, yep, Steve's got it highlighted right there with all the parking around it. The LC apartment development is kind of on the left-hand side of the screen. And then I always say the thing that's most recognizable in the New Albany area, the Taco Bell and the Huntington Bank are directly west of the site on Central College Road. So I want to talk a little bit about, before we get into this application specifically necessarily, talk about the Central College Road corridor and specifically this intersection. So this intersection really serves as a transition between the more dense retail, residential, and commercial development uses on the west side of 605. As you go east on Central College Road, east of 605, you get into the more traditional residential land uses. Again, I've mentioned some examples, but this is to the north of this site are the original portions of the New Albany Business Park with Discover, and then the two West Campus Oval office buildings, mentioned Taco Bell and Huntington. So Steve, if we could go on to the next screen or next slide, please. Alrighty, so the proposed rezoning will allow for the development of a new mixed-use area to be developed that will contain a variety of commercial, residential, and civil or senior living uses. The applicant's intent is to create a hamlet development as recommended in the recently adopted Engage New Albany strategic plan. But this hamlet concept was actually first envisioned in the Accord plan way back when. One of the recommendations of the original Accord plan was to create small hamlets, what they called hamlets, at certain geographically spaced locations with the goal of creating walkable, mixed-use environments connected to surrounding neighborhoods and integrated into an open space network. Next slide, Steve. So during the Engage New Albany community outreach portion of our strategic plan efforts, many residents participated in that process and expressed interest in creating small, walkable neighborhood retail locations, as well as restaurants, as well as adding some different housing types to help New Albany become a lifespan community, providing housing for young professionals, and as well as empty nesters. This feedback resulted in reviving this concept of a hamlet in our most recent strategic plan, which was endorsed by this board back in January. We also did development standards for hamlet areas designed to meet this need. The concept of a hamlet identifies opportunities in the city to introduce these walkable areas that are integrated with residential areas as well. The Engage New Albany plan identifies two areas in the city. They're kind of like this halo circle thing. Steve, if you don't mind pointing them out for us on the screen. There's two of them located in the city. These locations were selected based on their location in the city and the existing development patterns and context. And again, these locations were endorsed by the RFBA in January of this year. You can see here on the right-hand side of your screen, if you can, Steve, yep, right there, the right-hand side of the screen. We did a focus area. It was called the Northwest Focus Area that kind of encompasses this specific development site. And you can see here where a mixed-use development pattern was envisioned in the plan. And it actually falls within these exact site boundaries that we are proposing to rezone tonight. Steve, if you go down to the next one. So with all that being said, so the proposed rezoning application that's in front of you today is really this hamlet concept brought to life. The zoning text permits a variety of commercial, residential, which includes multifamily, attached and detached single family, as well as assisted living, senior living facility uses. These permitted uses are broken up into 6 different sub areas. The site will be accessed by the existing access drive behind the Taco Bell. Steve, if you could point that out. As well as 4 new curb cuts, an additional 1 curb cut on Central College Road, 1, 2, 3 on 605. So I'm going to kind of slowly walk through some of the different uses that are permitted in the zoning text with you guys today. So the applicant proposes to have the most dense multifamily use right at the corner of 605 and Central College Road, which provides a prominent architectural anchor and presence at this corner, meeting an important development standard found in the Accord Plan. They also propose to have some attached townhome type uses, as well as some whimsical cottages as described in the text, in kind of the middle area, as well as on the east side of 605. And then there's a senior living facility that's planned on the southern boundary of the site. Steve, if you go to the next slide, please. So these are some character images that were provided by the applicant, kind of their vision of what they kind of see these areas turning into as we move forward. Steve, if you go to the next one. So back to the illustrative site plan here. So next I'm going to talk about some of the commercial uses that are permitted in this area. So at the northwest corner of the zoning district, you can see that the applicant proposes to kind of transition into this area by providing the same type of uses that we kind of see in Columbus already with, smaller, a little bit more auto-oriented retail users. And that staff believes that provides an appropriate transition into this area. I apologize about background noise. I've got 2 little kids at home. Let's see here. So the epicenter of this zoning district will be located in sub-area 3, which is kind of I kind of call it like the middle of the area here. Allowing these mixed, 1 second, baby. 1 second. Providing this mixed type of uses within sub-area 3 accomplishes an important Accord goal of providing a town center hamlet with a diversity of uses centered around green space. Steve, if we go to the next slide. So here you can see kind of some character images of what the applicant has a vision for this area. This will be like the epicenter of the development. Steve, if you get on the next slide, please. Both the Accord and Engage New Albany strategic plan emphasize the importance of providing green space and promoting sustainability by protecting, preserving, and enhancing natural features in these mixed-use areas. The zoning district is bisected by the Sugar Run Creek. The applicant proposes to activate an 8.5-acre space around this creek as the center of the development. The text allows the applicant to install trails, benches, and other amenities in this area. And staff truly believes that this will be a great amenity for not only the New Albany community, but will serve as an attraction in Central Ohio as well. This acreage amounts to about 27% of the zoning district, and it meets the spirit and intent of both the Engage New Albany and Accord plans by providing green space and integrating it into the development of a hamlet. Steve, if you can go to the next one, please. So looking at the Accord land use plan, this site is located in the village residential land use category, but was evaluated given the proposed use against the town mixed use development standard, as they are most in line with the concept of a hamlet. Looking at these development standards, the application scores an 89% on the report card. Overall, give me 1 second. 1 second. I apologize, everyone. Overall, staff is very supportive of this rezoning application. The Engage New Albany strategic plan and the Accord plan both envision the concept of a hamlet, which was the intent of the zoning district. The RFBA panel, the Rocky Fork-Blacklick panel, endorsed the engaged plan, which identifies this site as one of 2 locations in the city of where this type of development is most appropriate given the surrounding development context. The engaged plan contains many development standards for hamlets, many of which are consistent with the Accord town mixed use development standards. The applicant commits to these principles and those of the master planning process and holistic design, which is a crucial part of our strategic plan and has made our community so successful this far. This process recognizes the intrinsic relationship between public and private realms to ensure the following general principles of the zoning district are met. Providing a pedestrian-friendly environment that places a high priority on walking and bicycling, creation of interesting and convenient destinations, a commitment to respecting the natural environment, and using high-quality architecture and design that emphasize beauty, human comfort, and creating a sense of place. To achieve these goals, the applicant commits to providing various master plans as a part of the first final development plan process, including a shared vehicular and bicycle parking plan, streetscape and perimeter landscaping plans, as well as lighting and signage plans for the development area. While the development does exceed the density recommendations at just shy of 12 units per acre, the overall development meets a vast majority of the Accord's key principles, general design standards, and this density is in line with the development pattern of a hamlet. The site plan, architectural commitments and requirements, landscaping, and strong emphasis on pedestrian experience will all lead to a development that is very desirable from a site design and planning perspective. Overall, the uses are appropriate due to this location along Central College Road, which has seen significant development since the adoption of the core plan. The Engaged New Albany plan contains a wide variety of development standards for hamlets, and the applicant is meeting a large majority of them. Thank you.
All right, thank you for that. Does staff have any quick comments before we go on and hear the presentation from the applicant?
Mr. Chapler?
Yes.
Let me go ahead and just ask a question of staff. We're aware that there have been some communications with the, excuse me, with the panel about this application. And I don't see one of the parties that corresponded with us among those here today, that being the Dybels. I just wondered, has staff had a chance to review that communication, and without necessarily taking a position on their assertions, are they factually accurate, or were there issues with the information they presented, if you don't mind? Particularly as it pertained to density.
Steve, I don't know if you want to jump in. I know I can say that we, Jennifer, I did reach out to her just to make sure she had the login information for this meeting, and she let me know that they just wanted to submit written testimony. They didn't want to actually speak during the meeting. And I'll let Steve handle the other aspects of your question, Mr. Paul.
Thank you.
Yeah, I apologize. I am pulling it up now. We also shared a letter with the applicant ahead of time. I might like defer to the applicant to address some of the comments from the resident that submitted the letter.
And that's fine. I mainly just wanted to make sure that someone had an opportunity to respond to their assertions. So thank you. That's perfect. Thank you.
All right. With that being said, then we'll go ahead and do the presentation by the applicant, and then we'll open it up for questions.
Thank you, Mike. Can everybody hear me okay? Great. Hello, Aaron Underhill here, attorney with Underhill and Hodge here in New Albany, and I have the pleasure of representing Steiner and Associates and their partner in this development out of Cleveland, Community Innovation Development. And we have a really innovative project here that is really the result of a lot of communication with staff, not only in recent months, but during the entire Engage New Albany strategic plan update that has gone on for over a year now and was recently adopted. And so we have been very measured in trying to kind of come along with that plan and try to deliver exactly what it's looking for. And we think we've been very successful in doing that. If you're not familiar with the Steiner organization and Jaromir Steiner himself, they were and continue to be heavily involved in the Easton project. That obviously speaks for itself. I'll let them toot their own horns on some of the other things they've done, but nationally and frankly internationally, a well-known and respected group. And Mr. Steiner is in fact a resident of New Albany, and so has a particular interest in doing something here that is really special. I think that really this is going to be a dynamic amenity for the community if approved. It provides a lot of interesting elements, not only for the residents and people who may work here, but really is intended to draw a broader audience, especially to this internal trailhead park is what we're calling it, or trailhead area, that's going to have a variety of uses that will allow for, outdoor entertainment in the summer, dining options, recreational opportunities, and it really brings a whole lot to the table in an area that is right on the edge here. As we all have mentioned, our favorite place, the Taco Bell there, which is a frequent lunch spot for me, I'm sorry to admit, but is in Columbus. And so we're right on the edge here, and we're trying to not tip our caps to what's going on in not only in New Albany, but Columbus to the west, and a lot of providing an amenity for a lot of residential development that has occurred to the west. So with that, I wanted to introduce two people. I'll go with the last one that's going to speak first, Mr. Steiner, who probably needs no introduction. We're going to have him talk a little bit about his vision here for the project. And then we also have Justin Leda, who is with the Steiner organization, who's going to walk you through the plan in more detail. And with that, I will hand it over to them.
Thank you.
And before Jaromir starts, can I take over the screen and put up my own presentation?
Okay.
Yeah, we can figure that out. I think Stephanie, can you just make Justin a presenter? Maybe Steve, you might have to stop sharing your screen.
Okay, I think I could take the ball from Steve. And
yeah.
Oh, okay, we're good.
Great.
Well, good evening. This is Jaromir Steiner. That's my first hearing where I'm doing it through the video, and I'm sure you must be doing that for quite a while now. I live in New Albany. Since I moved to Columbus almost 25 years ago, and it's the first time I'm involved in developing a project here. Some of you may recall I was the chair of the Urban Land Institute for Central Ohio, and intelligent land use is a personal passion of mine. And in our company also, we are very interested in doing the right things in the way we developed our projects. And also I was active with Engage New Albany in their sustainability group, when we were talking about the sustainability initiatives. So when I realized there was an opportunity here, frankly, I wanted to make sure that it was done right, because there's only a couple of locations like it was mentioned. And this kind of mixed-use environments can be really messed up if someone doesn't know what someone is doing. So this is basically our presentation. We'll do it in two parts. I'm going to give you kind of the background of why we are doing what we are doing. And then Justin Leda will present, basically the way we are answering to the challenges. So the next slide. Our location. I'm not going to belabor it, but the most important thing for me to notice that we are entirely in a commercial area. North of us is commercial, south of us is the vehicle group office buildings, west of us is the Ohio Health parcel, and then right of us, it moves toward residential. So it was important for us to make that transition correctly. Next slide. I mean, that's in our view to locate where we are. Next slide, please. So we basically, our context is, there are two documents. One is Inside 2050. And if you're interested in planning, you know, that was a major initiative for our region. And then Engage New Albany, obviously our city did that. So Inside New Albany, next slide, was done between Urban Land Institute, MORPC, the Mid-Ohio Regional Planning Commission, Columbus Foundation, Columbus Partnership, COTA. It was about answering a fundamental question. The question we're trying to answer was, Central Ohio is going to receive about 1 million new residents between 2010 and 2050, create 300,000 new jobs, and where did we want to put that million people? And that group, using some software from California, working with MORPC, created 4 scenarios. One is the scenario A, 495 square miles of land. So this is equal to the amount of land Columbus used when we get the prior million people. The 270 square mile solution, the solution B, was the one where we used the existing zoning rules. And then 45 square miles of, you know, fields and surrounding land was if you do a more focused development, and 15 square miles, which is not realistic in a multi-jurisdictional environment, would have been if we really try to compact everything. So it's amazing to see that 1 million people can be put in all those things. When you run the model, it was run by MORPC and their consultants, but the conclusion was that, you know, economic impact-wise, obviously tax revenue per acre was much higher in the denser environments. The infrastructure costs, both for investment and maintenance, went down as the density increased. The cost from the households went down as the density increased. Environmentally also, the auto emissions went down because people drove less. Less carbon emissions, as well as much less energy consumption, both in the homes and for transportation. And health costs went down because there's a direct correlation between upper respiratory illnesses and carbon in the air. And then obviously the commuting, the miles went down in literally in billions of vehicle mile traveled. So, basically that study showed that there is a benefit to organize the denser, development, and both positive economic impact, environmental, and quality of life. The second document we looked at, part of this study, was the impact of the change in demographics. That's very important to understand because, and I will really spend a little bit of time on this. It's really important that we all understand this because between 1990 and 2010, this is the box to the left, the household creation, 19% of the households were 65 and older. 3% only were 35 and under. In the middle, you have the big packet, the 78%. These are the households between 35 and 64-year-old. If you look at 2010, 2040, that is the period in which we are right now, the household formations are moving to the older generations, 65 and older, more households for those people, and more households for the under 35, and then much less households than before between 35 and 64-year-olds. So that is a consequence on the type of housing we need, because where before, again, look at the middle box, the left column shows you single living alone, 28%, that's in 2010. 41% household without children, 31% household with children. But you move forward to 2040, the numbers change. 34% now singles living alone. People living alone, aging older, getting married later, etc. 38% without children, and 28% with children. Although the numbers don't look drastically different, 28 to 31 is not a big deal at the bottom. In the middle, 41 to 38, not a big deal. Even the 28 to 34 is not earth-shattering. But the middle column tells you the story. That is, the type of housing we are going to need during those 30 years is very different than what we have. We need much more housing for the single living alone, much less housing for household with children, and even less, still less household for even the household without children. So that middle column, it was the warning sign that MORPC sent to the local, zoning authorities. Be careful, do not plan land uses based on the old patterns. The new patterns are going to be very different. The next slide, please. So essentially, I'm not going to belabor it again, but you can understand, again, you have the same idea. On the left side is 2010, the type of housing, attached is in yellow, 24 is in, in blue is the small lots, and the gray is the large lots. And into 2050, you see the numbers, they change, but in the middle is what we need to do during the next 30 years or 40 years, which is 300,000 new households. And essentially, we need a lot of attached homes, small lots, a lot of them, not many large lots anymore, given the change in the people's profiles. So let's go next, please. So so basically, the second document we looked at. So you understand now inside 2050. Densification is fiscally and environmentally responsible, and then we need to definitely think differently about households. So then we look at Engage New Albany studies, and I was part of it, but obviously it's a much bigger document. And in Engage New Albany, this looks much broadly, but same idea. They wanted to essentially admitted that New Albany is getting larger, and they are different personality, different neighborhoods, and every one of them merits to be paid attention to. The village center is nice, but on north side of the freeway, there isn't much. And I live in the south side, in the country club communities, and clearly, like old people remember, and that was designed for anything which was south of Dublin Granville Road. Most of the thinking was about that. The freeway did not even exist. And sometimes applying those rules to the north side is not always simple. And that's why the north side has never developed as harmoniously as the south side. So the next observation was that, again, the Engage New Albany figured out the same thing that the Inside 2050 said. We need more clustered neighborhoods, with concentrated homes, attached townhomes, and so forth, like you see them on the pictures. Also, they recommended what they call a lifespan community. We basically, from an urban planning standpoint, a true neighborhood, we define it as a place where someone in his lifetime can move twice. That means that, for example, you come as a after-school college, you have your apartment, then from there you move to your first house, then maybe a larger house, then one day you become an empty nester, and then one day you go to senior living. If you don't have at least a couple of those move within the community, then you are not a true neighborhood. And right now, clearly we have some problems. My son went to college. If he lives, he's not in Columbus now, but if he came here, I knew I was going to lose him to Short North. He was not going to live in New Albany. And we need to create villages and communities where people can live all their lives, from young to old. So that's something recommended also by Engage New Albany, and pedestrian friendly, connected, etc. And also one of their conclusions was, again, I'm checking the survey results, and you have them, obviously, you approved all this. We need to be a lifespan community. We need to create new retail areas outside the existing village center, more dining and retail options, more parks, recreation, and open spaces, and also better programming of those spaces, particularly family-oriented, programming. So basically, that was the report. And at that point, that was the background. And I said, if we are going to do something in my city, in my village, then we need to respond according to this big picture and based on actual needs. So now I'm going to let Justin to present our solution more in detail.
Okay, thank you, Jaromir. So just as we established the context in that first section of the presentation, this is where we're going to present the vision. And the vision is a unique mixed-use neighborhood center that is based on the fundamentals of sustainable planning, timeless design, and the creation of a wonderful public realm, which is just part of all the projects that we do at Steiner. So again, looking at the context of kind of north of 161, where Jaromir mentioned, we are, again, in a fairly unique situation where we have taller office buildings to our south. We have a more sprawling, surface parked, corporate campus to our north. The Taco Bell that folks have mentioned, and the KinderCare that backs up to us on this location. A denser multifamily product that's just slightly down the street. But at the same time, we still have the single residential to the east, which is very important to try to pay respect to. So when we started looking at the plan, and I think this was shared earlier, there were a couple key elements that were important to us in the master planning effort. Number one was Sugar Run. That was a very important design element for us. And so what we wanted to do was establish this, 190 plus foot green corridor that kind of wraps through the middle of the site. It becomes a wonderful amenity for the development, but also a wonderful amenity for the rest of the community, and we kind of use that as one of the launching points for our planning effort. The second one was, just as we mentioned, the single family residential to the east. We did feel it was very important to maintain a residential use on the east side of 605. So that's what we've established over here, and I'll kind of get to that in a second. And then the second was in kind of correlation with having the residential on that east side, where we had the commercial uses and maybe a little bit more of a parking demand. We wanted to push that further into the site and further to the west, closer to the comparable uses that were kind of on the jurisdictional line between Columbus. So again, those were anchored more in the middle. But looking at each one a little bit in more detail, on this side of the plan, on the east side, in this location, we have detached small lot units that front a kind of a wonderful park location. And then wrapping around them and fronting New Albany Condit and Central College is a collection of townhomes. The intent of that product type, it's geared towards more the empty nester product. It's not geared towards a family, the product that we plan to deliver. So it has a smaller number of bedrooms. You're gonna have to focus on more on amenities, but more geared towards the empty nester product. When you jump across to the west side of 605, we placed our senior living facility to the south of the creek. And one of the reasons we did that is we talked with different operators and groups that were interested. What came out is that in the senior living facility, where you have long-term residents like this is not intended for a short-term resident or short-term user. The long-term residents are still fairly active, and they want the ability to have some co-location to activities and energy and a little bit of an excitement. So the fact that they could still be nestled south of the creek and the trees, but still have a connection over to the trailhead area where there's a little bit of activity in the stage in the park, that was very desirable for the groups we spoke with. As you jump to the north side of the Sugar Run, we have a collection of clusters of townhomes that are nestled within the creek and the stormwater basin. To the north of it, we have this is our location of our multifamily product. And just to kind of give you a context for this is intended also very specifically for a customer that does not have children. It's intended as someone or a couple right out of college, so sort of a millennial or an active adult, kind of empty nester. We actually have committed in the zoning text that over 55% of those units would be one bedroom or studios. So again, this is not intended to be the larger unit sizes. This is geared amenity-wise, size-wise, towards a non-child kind of household. As Chris mentioned, we are extending the outlot kind of format from the Taco Bell over, but this is where we start to layer in more of the New Albany design guide regulations. So it'll start to transition into the balance of the site. And in the middle, this is where we do have our trailhead experience. This is it's a fairly small commercial space, 15 to 20,000 square feet. We're intending to have a co-working environment, but also a collection of food users, maybe a bar opportunity that can kind of work with some of those food users as well. They all front a wonderful kind of park area that we plan to animate and program. It has a small stage. This is not a large scale stage, but it's a small stage. And then actually off to the left here, I think Chris mentioned the Whimsical Residences. These are a collection of very small 6 to 100 square foot standalone rental units. This is intended really for like Yarmir's son when he gets out of college that might come here and take a 6-month rental. Our intention is actually, if we can get it worked out, we like to set up a series of design kind of parameters, but then let a collection of different architects design each unit, so they each have a little bit of their own kind of special flair. We've also heard from the business community that there's pretty strong interest in the ability for someone who's coming to New Albany for, say, 2 to 3 weeks, that they could have maybe a short-term rental here instead of being in a hotel. So that kind of gives a quick overview of the plan from the kind of physical built part. From the open space, as mentioned, we are planning on an 8.5 acre park that runs along Sugar Creek and then also up into that trailhead experience. And just even in the term trailhead, we plan on putting in trails and providing enough parking where people can actually come here, park their car, and then actually walk along the stream and the kind of the natural corridor. So jumping to the next slide, just giving a little bit more, I think this slide was shown, but just give you a little context. This central image is actually a rendering of what we are proposing. This was from one of our designers. These are the townhomes that are fronting 605. And then the multifamily you'll see in another slide. Here's just kind of a little image of what a whimsical residence could look like. You can see each individual unit in kind of in style. The mixed use district, this is the trailhead. Our thought is that this is a little bit more casual than some of the style and the offering of the village center. The architecture is a little, not to say rustic, but it's maybe a little bit more farmhouse. Some of the detailing is a little bit more organic and a little bit more casual in the way we're doing it. I've been using the term of a kind of this metaphor of a geode, where the outside of the project facing 605 and Central College will follow a more rigid kind of Georgian style, consistent with everything else. But the inside here in the middle of the trailhead, this is where we can have a little bit more sparkle, a little bit more creative, and a little bit more energy. So that's why when we look at the kind of the master signage package we'll come back to with the final development plan, we'll kind of try to be pushing maybe some of the signage and some of that to be a little more creative and kind of nuanced in this location. Trailhead Park, I think we've talked about that. We'd love to extend these the trails. Along with that, we plan on providing a collection of different amenities. Children's play area, we'd actually like to see if we can make this a little bit more of a natural kind of structure and play space that we're working at. We've been looking at meditation spaces and fountains and different components that would be within the kind of the public realm that we are creating. And then environmental initiatives, definitely core to what we've always been. I've been at Steiner 16 years, and every project, it's something that we focus on. Sugar Run, we're going to be working on a stream bank restoration effort to kind of bring that back to, you know, stabilized parts, reintroducing native species within that area, working on alternative wetland remediation strategies. We're actually looking at pervious pavers and a collection of other stormwater management solutions. And then consistent with also sort of our Steiner DNA, pollinator-friendly plantings. I think we're going to have our own honey soon at Easton, and maybe one day we'll be able to have our own Nona honey from our beehives here as well. And so going back to the checklist that Jaromir kind of mentioned in the first section, as you see, we have the lifespan neighborhood, we have the additional retail and dining options that are provided, we have the parks, recreation, and open space. And just in Steiner and what we do, we have the programming and the facilities and the spaces to do some wonderful family-oriented or arts and cultural programming within the development. The last section, which I'll jump in, Jaromir can comment as well, is the last section is where we focus on what are the impacts. That's economic, that's schools. How does this impact the schools? How does this impact traffic, which we know is very important to everybody? And then what does it mean for the streets and for the connectivity throughout the community? Oh, there we go. So starting with the economic impact and taking kind of a inspiration from the Insight 2050, where they use the urban footprint program to study the economic impact of different development and growth patterns. We partnered with OHM, who did use the urban footprint software to model our site versus the existing zoning usage to see what the impacts were. And so when we look at just purely a tax revenue perspective, I think obviously you can tell based on the density it's a significant increase in cumulative tax revenue based on the site. When you get to the school district impact, you can see we modeled the 32 lots ultimately had a load factor of 0.8, which is fairly standard and typical kind of a proven ratio. We'd have roughly 26 students. When you recalculate the proposed development program based on the different load factors, we come up with the potential of just under 60 students. Now, I think there was a lot of concern about the number of students in potentially in that apartment complex or the multifamily building. And again, because we're targeting a smaller unit type, it does not generate a high number of kids. We actually have over 1,000 apartment units ourselves. And so we actually have proven expertise and proven numbers from a project in Cincinnati in a very high quality school district where out of 300 units, I think we only had about 6 students total. We did also look at different comps, market in Maine. When we looked at the load factor ratio, we also talked with a collection of different developers who focus on this product type. Again, this is not a big swath of garden style 3-bedroom or large 2-bedroom units. It's a smaller product, which is why we only generate 60 students. And most of that is actually coming in theory from the east side where we are targeting an empty nester product, but we still modeled it as if it was a single family unit. So when you look at that, the additional 33 students that would be generated, you can see that actually the cost to the schools go up just about double additional expense. But from the revenue perspective, we're generating almost 9 times the revenue for the schools with a significant actually surplus. In the existing zoning, there would actually be a deficit on a yearly basis. We're actually projecting a significant surplus each year from the school perspective. Traffic, I know traffic is a very important aspect of this, and I just want to kind of just quickly lay out how are we approaching traffic. So when we talk about a lot of our planning efforts, we kind of talk about a strategic and a tactical. From the tactical perspective, kind of the deep engineering, we're working with a local firm, Carpenter Marty, significant experience within the New Albany community. They've been running our TIS. They've been running all the modeling, all the details. We did submit that draft to the city, and the city's engineer is now reviewing that to say, okay, based on the way they ran analysis with growth rates and where they're projecting different cars to come and go, is this an accurate way to model it? And then we will, once we get that feedback, we will be remodeling it for the tactical engineering perspective. From a strategic perspective, since I joined Steiner 16 years ago, we've worked with a firm out of Washington, D.C. called Wells and Associates. They have always been sort of our strategic thinker when it comes to traffic at kind of a high level. They are doing a peer review at the same time of everything that we're getting from Carpenter Marty and from the city engineer to see, is there anything that we're missing from kind of the studies? The initial study is showing that we actually don't generate a significant increase in traffic flow. There is an increase. I think at peak time, its modeling could be 5 to 8 seconds additional delay. That's only at the very peak hour. The rest of the time, it's more dispersed. The fact that we have multiple connections in and out into the development is actually an advantage. So that's a benefit. But what we are also having, and so what we do have to install are a collection of 3 turn lanes. First one at number 1, some turn lanes, number 2 turn lanes, and this number 3 up here on Central College, a turn lane, which I'm not sure you can see it, but on my screen, it's actually striped already for a future turn lane to come into the site. So while we have a pretty good sense of what our impact is to the street and the traffic network, we are also trying to understand what does the regional growth impact. And so that's another aspect that Wells is helping us study to say, okay, as the traffic flow continuing north on 605 goes past our site, what does that mean for our site? We think it could be possible that we might actually have to shift these townhomes over a bit to be able to provide additional right-of-way for maybe a future turn lane. But we want to make sure that we're master planning this with kind of the long-term strategy in mind, and not just trying to kind of come up with the strategy for today. I don't know if Yarmir, if you have any.
I want to be clear that everybody understands. From a classical traffic analysis standpoint, the impact of this project is negligible. And I mean, verified by the engineers of the village, I mean, we are very comfortable. What we are saying, though, if you look at the future of New Albany, for things that have nothing to do with us, we believe that Condit Road will have to be widened. And if that's the conclusion, then we'll have to modify the plan on the right side of the street to make room for that future growth. And if the village asks us, probably we can even build that in preparation for that. But I mean, this is not because of something we are doing. This is because just to be, so that we don't have to later regret that we did not look to it.
Correct. The next item is just kind of going back to the street, but the street design. This image at the top, this is actually our rendering of 605 looking north. So you have the townhomes on the right and you have the multifamily building on the left. So what we're trying to do is establish kind of a nice gateway as you're coming south along 605 that you know you're entering more into the traditional part of New Albany. The architecture changes. We reestablish a very wonderful kind of street cross section with double rows of trees, the sidewalk network, and really kind of bring that all together. My computer screen. Oh, there we go. Froze for a second. Another component is connectivity. We've talked about the vehicular connectivity, the fact that we have all these connections onto multiple to the east, to the west, to the north. That's very beneficial. But at the same time, we're also looking at pedestrian connectivity as we hope to install trails along Sugar Run. And as you look at this is one of the things that we studied was if this Sugar Run corridor is extended throughout the community, how could that all weave together? We've committed to putting into the white dotted section here of pedestrian paths along the creek. We've been having initial conversations with the owners along the yellow to see if we could extend the trail network that direction. We have been talking to some of the residents of the enclave to find out if they do or don't, or how we might connect kind of delicately to their community as well. But we think this could be a wonderful kind of green ribbon that runs through the region. And in summary, I think we talked about that the fact from an urban planning perspective, we focused on the regional aspect of what Insight 2050 said. We focused on the city perspective of Engage New Albany. We're creating a wonderful place on north of 161 that meets the kind of changing residential demand. From an economic perspective, it's a benefit tax-wise to the city and to the schools. And clearly sustainability and quality of life are kind of core to our plan and core to what we have always done. And I think that is all I have. Now I just don't know how to stop sharing. Oh, there we go. Unless you want me to pull up the plan, I can also do that.
Okay, thank you very much for your presentation. I would like to open it up for a few questions from the panel for either staff or the applicant. And then we also have, after that, then I'd like to have people from the community if they have any input on it. But I would like to get the staff's idea and the applicants for the panel first. So does anybody on the panel have a question for either staff or the applicant?
I have a quick question, and this is for any, maybe the applicant. Where do you anticipate most people will enter and exit this development?
Sorry, I'm pulling up the plan in my, I suspect it's going to be along Central College. I think will be the number one, and then the second will be on 605 on that north, kind of on that connection. The connection to the west that actually will connect to a kind of a private drive aisle that we're trying to expand within the Columbus behind Taco Bell. That's a right in, right out only. So we think that maybe kind of maybe during the days we could see people coming in there for maybe if we have lunch options, they may come in there, but it's not a full intersection at that location.
And Justin, I might add.
Also, I would like to add, Mr. Smithers, that we also spoke to Ohio Health, who owned the property to our left, and we suggested to them that they connect the street who serves the senior living through their property to New Albany. And they were not willing to commit. So we designed our street in such a way that that connection can be made. If the public requests it from them, but if that doesn't happen, then we'll do a cul-de-sac. But from an urban planning standpoint, we would strongly suggest that the city of Columbus ask them to connect to our street.
Thank you.
Hey, Mike, this is Jay. I have a question for the applicants. How many phases do you anticipate it'll take to complete the project?
I can answer the question. If you want, we believe that all the components of the project will happen at the same time. That means we'll initiate everything at once. But we believe that the townhomes and the single-family homes might spread, over a period of time. They will solve one at a time, etc. But whether it's the millennial or empty nester apartments, or whether it's the senior living or the Trailhead Park, the core of it will happen immediately. This is the first thing we'll start.
And just to add on that, I'll just add on that as well. Will be just the practicalities of construction. The east side of 605 with the that product, it will build quicker. So we'll be able to establish and get that up and running quicker than the multifamily building on the west side. So I'd expect that will be done slightly before the balance of the west side.
Thank you.
Yeah, I've got a question for Steve and Chris. Procedurally, are we today as a board, are we looking at a zoning change, or are we also looking at approval of this overall project?
So you are reviewing a rezoning application that's submitted to you today. So rezonings for the city of New Albany, it's initially heard by the Accord panel as part of the entitlement process. Yeah, then it goes to Planning Commission, who then makes the ultimate recommendation to City Council. And as Chris mentioned, there is a secondary entitlement process to this, which is the final development plan. So as part of the rezoning, we establish some sub-area boundaries, regulations, and development standards for things like landscaping, building, and uses. But those final details are really ironed out as part of the final development plan stage that's heard by just the Planning Commission.
Okay. And that was my question, because I know in the past, obviously, we reviewed final development plans and so forth, elevations, landscaping, setbacks, things like that. But I assume that we're nowhere close in this application to looking at something like that. So we're just looking at the changing approval of the zoning change. That's it.
That's correct.
So what about the density issues? How are we addressing that then?
Yeah, so I believe Accord recommends 6 units per gross acre. As Chris mentioned, this is exceeding the density, but overall, based on the strong planning principles that are incorporated into the design, so there's things like strong vehicular and pedestrian connectivity. It's being master planned via an IPUD application. And it's meeting the majority, I think, if not all of the standards in the Engage New Albany plan for the hamlets. So while it's not meeting the density recommendations, which is one factor when looking at holistically in the nature of the hamlet of itself, staff is supportive of the proposal.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions from the panel? Okay, I have one question, and this may be for Justin. Could you go over again, or maybe you didn't say it and I missed it. Where are the people in the multifamily unit parking?
Yeah, so the multifamily unit building, there will be a parking garage that's internal to the building. So the
Okay.
garage will be wrapped by the units. So again, this is not a garden style apartment where, you know, surface lot and kind of various stairwells. To be able to get into the property, there'll be basically a key card access to get into the private garage, covered garage, and then you go from there directly into the facility. So you will not see the parking garage, and if there's any spot you do see it, we did commit into the zoning text to basically blend it in with the architecture, so it's not doesn't stand out as a parking garage.
Where would visitors park?
The visitors for the residential,
Yeah,
or
for the multifamily.
the multifamily, they would have to coordinate that with a resident or the overflow parking within the trailhead facility would park there. And as part of the zoning text, we did agree we will be running for the final development plan a full detailed shared parking analysis by sub area so that we can make sure that it fully functions appropriately.
All righty, thank you.
I had another question concerning the students, and the comment was made that it looks, you know, per the study that Justin and Yarmar put together, it said that it would be like 60 students as the estimate coming out of this development. Steve and Chris, did the staff put together? Maybe I didn't read it. Did you put together your own synopsis of the impact on the school systems?
So the applicant did submit a school impact statement. I can say we as staff, when we evaluated the proposal, we looked at the ratios that were used to generate the proposed number of students, and those are consistent with other developments. So those ratios are consistent with historical, I guess, ratios used for other either age-restricted or single-family type developments in the New Albany community.
Okay, thanks.
And to add to that, one benefit, because of our collection of projects, we actually have, you know, this is the actual ratio for this product or this project. So we were able to kind of validate and confirm those ratios were consistent with similar products that we've built and managed.
Okay, thank you. Well, with that, I'd like to ask the staff if there are any members of the public who wish to make a statement or ask a question at this point in time.
Yes, I believe we have Mr. Bill Rash, and then Stephanie, did you confirm if Jennifer is on the call?
I think maybe I see a Jen.
I am on the call.
So let's go. Okay, perfect. So let's start with Bill, and then we can jump over to Jen. And then just to note for the panel, both of our speakers are the ones that provided the written comment as well, which you were emailed. So we're not going to read those verbatim for the record since you already have them. But I'm not sure if there will be anyone in addition to these two folks who want to speak. So we'll go ahead and do them and then ask if there's anyone else.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I guess Bill's up first.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
All of you can hear me? Great. I am a member of the Friends of the Rocky Fork and the Sugar Run and Rose Run tributaries. Organization started in the late 70s, early 80s, and we've been very, very active over all those years, 30 plus more. And I have to basically tell you how elated and enthusiastic I am about this product. If you notice that, to compare it to the Rose Run Park, which by the way is elegant, The Rose Run Park also has improved, and with trails, the entire corridor from the firehouse on Johnstown down to the Byington Park. And of course, trails now are connecting even to Harlan Road. Here, and I need my the planning staff to verify it. This product, the park is being built, the Sugar Run Park, Trailhead Park, is being constructed actually in the early phases of the project. It also, the funding initially is being done by the developer. And that's my conclusion from reading the text of both the developer and, of course, the Rocky Fork-Blacklick Accord. This is remarkable because it took us over 20 years to develop and obtain multiple grants from the state and federal grants to accomplish and achieve the Rose Run Park. And now, as you know, this is a beautiful amenity. I think this Sugar Run Park can rival that. What's also important is that Steiner and Associates initiate on their own the improvement of this new amenity. And it follows actually the really outstanding job done by UMHT, Sandy Doyle, and their wetland or environmental staff. So I can't tell you, I don't think there's any project that I've seen initiate all the guidelines of the Rocky Fork-Blacklick Accord in the very beginning. As you know from my memo that I've asked Stephanie to enter into the record, this project is essentially 100%, in my estimation. It has met the germane criteria of all the standards that deal with environmental stewardship. And I've checked those out. And also, it's not an easy topography to create a park with its wide stream corridor protection zone. There is a high amount of relief to the edges, or might say the floodway part of the stream as it moves into the floodplain. So with that in mind, I just cannot overemphasize that from day one, this developer has really absorbed all the standards, not only of New Albany and the Rocky Fork Accord, but also even the standards by the Clean Water Act, Section 404, on the wetland and stream corridor preservation. So that's basically the statement I would like to make is it's for the first time since 1980 around there that we began our organization and have engaged in multiple, and sometimes very contentious efforts to enforce the law as it stands. We have an environmental program in our high school that is nationally rated, and the students have seen the worst and they've seen the best. They now have an opportunity to study the best. As I scrupulously went over the last slide, the topographic area, checking every section of the park, the half park. Are there any questions for me from staff or the panel or the applicant?
Well, nobody's responding, so I'd say there are no questions at the moment.
Well, that's a good sign, actually. I admit that even without my face being in the park articulate enough to do that. But I just cannot tell you how enthused I have been as evidence of, I believe probably all or most of you received the written statement composed by our Urban Development Committee. And we do this for all projects. We did it for the amphitheater, for example, which, you know, is a beautiful facility. So congratulations to the Fork-Blacklick Accord for its guidance, and to the developer for, in my calculation, 6 out of 6 of the criteria, they have 100%, which is remarkable, and to my knowledge, unprecedented. So thank you very much. My email is available to you, you know, from the meeting documents. So please contact me later if you have any questions. And once again, Yarmer Steiner and Justin, and of course, Aaron Underhill for the management of the zoning process. I'm very appreciative.
The only comment I have is, Bill, this is Todd Brubaker, and I appreciate you participating in this meeting today, and also appreciate everything you've done for this community. So, and your words carry a lot of credence. So thanks.
Well, thank you, Todd. Knowing you as, you know, from our work on the Parks and Trails and other committees, that means a lot. I also mentioned Dave Paul has been tirelessly working for many, many years in the Northland Community Council. And so he also is committed to sound development and environmental protection.
Thank you for the shout out, Bill. It's good to hear from you.
You're welcome, Dave.
Okay, I'm Jen, and I think it might be my turn. I'm Jennifer Dybel.
Yes, go ahead, Jen.
Okay, I'm Jennifer Dybel, and my husband and I submitted public comment for your review, which I appreciate. We have been on since the beginning of this, though we weren't in the WebEx as speakers, so you couldn't see us earlier. But we have heard your entire presentation, and we appreciate that you have addressed a number of the concerns that we mentioned in our comments throughout your presentations. We also are very supportive of development, and we think the renderings look beautiful. We think that the improvements that you intend to make are wonderful and will be assets to New Albany for sure. Our questions and concerns definitely do relate to density, traffic, and the student impact. Mr. Steiner mentioned, I believe, that the north has not been as planned as the south, clearly within New Albany. And all three of the items that we mentioned in our comments probably do relate in some part to that fact. The density being requested is at a minimum double. If I think Steve used the numbers 6 and 12 earlier. I believe, though, that it's requested at 3 dwelling units per acre gross, and this proposal is almost 12 units per acre gross. If I have that wrong, someone jump in and correct me, please. But if that's the case, then it's actually 4 times what the panel would normally approve. And we are concerned about that, though I did hear Mr. Leda mention that the apartments are intended, and I read this in your document as well, to be 55% 1-bedroom or studio apartments. We know there are many cases within the New Albany school districts of one parent obtaining an apartment within the district to have their children within the district. Or, I mean, that's fairly, I would think the schools will tell you that that's fairly common here. And we are concerned that the traffic and the student impact to the schools will be significant based on the density that you are proposing in your documentation. And as we mentioned in our comments, townhouses on both sides, although there would still be students, there would not be the significant number of vehicles driving down New Albany Condon. I also heard mention of the potential for that road to be widened at some point, or your plans or your willingness to consider a right turn lane onto Central College. Those are very forward-thinking ideas or options on your part, but I do think that we have to consider a roundabout or a traffic light for Snyder Loop if that's remotely on the table, because we already can't get out of this neighborhood pre-COVID at specific times of the day. And it shouldn't have to take 20 minutes to get to the library from our neighborhood when it's a 3-minute drive at a normal time. So that we need to consider how we will widen this road. And if we widen this road, what will happen to our neighborhood and the neighborhoods north of us, of course, are part of that, we recognize, but we can't get out already, and we need to be able to get out to turn left, to go south, not just a right turn lane to get onto Central College. So we'd like the city, we'd like whoever needs to hear this, we need that heard. We need that to be heard through this as more and more development is coming. We cannot turn left. We need to be able to turn left to get our kids to the schools, to get our kids picked up from practice. That's the later time of the day. To get to Eagles, to get pizza, to get to the library, to get to all these things. We can't get there, and neither will any of these people that you're planning to put into the apartments or the townhouses or the whimsical units. They won't be able to get south to get to the center of the village because the traffic is already bad. The student impact, I think, I did mention the 1 bedroom or the studio units being beneficial, but I do think within New Albany, we would like to know if there has been any analysis of the apartments, for example, at Hamilton Road, or other apartments within the New Albany School District, to know how many students actually come from those apartment complexes. Because I think although you have modeling for apartments, I don't know if they're comparative actually within New Albany schools. And that's important to us. If you have it, we would love to see it and we will believe you. We just want to see it if it exists. Those were the heart of the comments that we made, and any response you want to make is appreciated, but if not, we know you did attempt to address several of these concerns through your original presentation.
Okay, I'll let Yarmir go first. You're muted, Yarmir.
I have dogs in the house, so to be careful. Thank you. I think we both try to answer those questions. We are very concerned when we do something like this about our neighbors. We did not get into too many details, but we even spoke individually to our direct neighbors. I mean, they are direct neighbors to the right, I mean, creating barriers, we're building mounds, giving them pride. We did not even mention any of those conversations here. So we care. So it's not, we don't do projects like this unconsciously. I would like to address the apartments, the student situation first. I mean, those anecdotes, there are many of those. And I think the city maybe owes to everyone to actually do a study, because the best way to study is to see the bus traffic. I mean, the kids have to be picked from school. So, so who is living where and how those things are working. And address or otherwise, we are based our information on actual studies of apartments of this type. It's very important not to compare 2-3 bedroom apartments, garden style, big parking lots, staircases, with a millennial apartment product, which is more a downtown product, like we have in downtown Columbus, where a 2-bedroom apartment, the few we have are 800 square feet. I mean, that's a living room in New Albany, So, I mean, these are tight apartments done for millennials. And, but we'll be happy to share our numbers. Regarding the density, the fear of density in itself, that's why I made that initial presentation. That was a very, very important question in our region. Forget about New Albany, the whole region, the central Ohio. And that's why we did that Inside 2050 study, to understand the fiscal consequences, the financial consequences, the environmental consequences, the quality of life consequences. And I will tell you that those studies is what caused Newark to redevelop their downtown, and what Lancaster is doing right now. I mean, all those things, are coming because of that. And then from a traffic standpoint, we share your concerns, but I would like to say tongue in cheek, it's good to have something decent north of the freeway so everybody doesn't have to run down Village Center. I mean, because, when you have a central point and there's no other place to go, then everybody goes to the same place. By creating dispersed environments like this, it makes it a little bit easier. But more seriously, though, that's why we hire our traffic engineers from Washington. Because if I go the conventional way, like we did, we have to do it for the village, all we have to do calculate our impact. Well, we have little impact, and we can prove it to you. And the main reason is because we don't have offices. All we have is some co-working environment for 5,000 square feet, and that's it. And that doesn't create traffic problems. Apartments don't create traffic problems. Office buildings create problems. But we know this is a false way of addressing the problem. We need to look at it more globally. New Albany is growing to the north and to the east. That's why we hired Wells and Associates, and we asked them to look at the whole village. This is not our job, but we will look at it. And that's why we realized that that intersection needs improvement. So we'll work with the village. I don't know exactly, frankly, where that circle we are talking about is. But I mean, if the village says, I mean, there is some circle we need to do in our direct vicinity, we'll be more than happy to participate and to help. But I mean, we cannot fix with one project all the traffic problems of the village. At least we can do the ones who are around us. That's what we are trying to do. And and I'm really confident that when this is over, the quality of life north of the freeway will improve. I mean, I came here late. I came here in late 90s or mid 90s when I moved to Ohio. All the planning by Jack Kessler and Les and everybody else was done well before I came. At that time, there was no freeway, even when I came. Everything was planned for south of the freeway, south of the old New Albany Road to go to the village center. And that is the community we live in. North side of it was totally ignored, and no wonder. And I mean, the things, I mean, in my opinion, don't work very well. In fact, there's not even a gathering space north side of the thing. So we are trying to remediate this, and in the process, maybe fix some of the other problems at the same time. But on a positive note, what I want to say, Canini's project, I don't know if you noticed it, is basically where Sugar Run starts. So, and interestingly, this meeting started by the beginning of Sugar Run. I mean, that his retention pond is basically what feeds Sugar Run. And then we are kind of in the middle of it. We fixed it. But I don't know if you realize that Sugar Run goes all the way to Thompson Park and below. And I really hope that we will connect EMHNT, Ohio Health, and our Peace all the way to Giant Eagle. But I hope to work with the Parks and Recreation as a citizen to see if we can extend it all the way down to Thompson Park. Yeah, I mean, that would be a remarkable achievement, for again, regional communication. We can only do our part. I mean, we can do trailhead, we do our piece, we go to our neighbors, and in fact, we are going to work with them and try to fix the portions next to us. But for the rest, we need to work all together. Anyway, so that's kind of my way of putting it. Maybe Justin, who has less accent than me, can say the same thing so everybody can understand.
No, I think that's great. The only thing I did want to add is we are in full agreement, or I'm in full agreement, that we are an abnormal developer because we actually like to slow down traffic sometimes because we like to make the pedestrian more important than the car. So the fact that 605 is 45, I'd also like to see if we can lower that to a lower speed limit, just because as you're coming through, I think it's going to be better for our area. And I know that was one item you brought up.
Absolutely. That's one of the things we were saying with the roundabout or a light or something would slow that traffic down. Just for Mr. Snyder's benefit, Snyder Loop is the road that it would be directly across from the entrance to the senior living.
I see.
And that's where we were thinking a roundabout or something like that would be very beneficial. We're also concerned about the amount of cars that would be coming in and out of a senior center, or people who will be working there, or OT, PT type staff that would need to be there. We think that they're going to benefit also from some kind of roundabout, whether they go north or south to go home.
You know, I would like to reassure you that if the city decides, because it's not up to us, but if the city decides that money well spent is, you know, a roundabout in that location, instead of widening something else, I mean, we are willing to work with you, but I mean, it's difficult for us to say, okay, let's put a roundabout here so that we are nice to you. I mean, I mean, the city has to play kind of the big role of looking at the big picture. And if that's necessary, I mean, I will tell you, we'll give the right of way automatically. I hope you do on your side, and then, you know, see what happens.
We understand. Thank you.
Hi, Jen. This is Steve Mayer. I'm with the City of New Albany. So as the applicant mentioned, yeah, they did prepare a traffic study. Our traffic engineer is evaluating that right now. It's about I think it's 250 to 300 page document. So it's a very technical document. So while, or I guess I should say what Christian mentioned earlier during his presentation, this is the first of 3 boards and commissions that hear the rezoning application as part of the overall entitlement process. So in fairness to the applicants and to the board, so while the Accord panel contains street typology and character standards for evaluation, it doesn't have standards for traffic management and studies. So these technical documents that we have and that we're evaluating as staff, those contain the recommendations for the items we've been talking about, like intersection improvements and turn lanes. And those will be evaluated by the Planning Commission and City Council as part of those upcoming meetings in the future. And so we'll have additional information to share publicly as part of our future staff reports. So, you know, from the city standpoint, what our recommendations are for those street improvements.
Mike, can you hear me?
Yes.
If I could just make a 30-second comment on the trail network connectivity of this project. Is that all right?
Yes.
Yes. One of the things is that the Parks and Trails Board, as Steve and I talked about, we are not in the formal approval or recommended approval process, but after the, Steve, correct me on this, after the final plat or preliminary is approved, this will be reviewed by the Parks and Trails Board prior to the final decision by the Planning Commission. And I must tell you that the highest priority of the Parks and Trails Board is that trails, as much as you can, go through a natural amenity rather than only be alongside the right-of-way of a major arterial highway. And this project is beautiful by connecting 605's trail, which is already up there, all the way over to the New Albany Road North, east, I'm sorry, New Albany Road East connection. So that's a feature that is absolutely ideal. Having a trail internally through a natural feature. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Okay, last chance. Is any other questions? Nope. Okay. Well, then we need to have a panel member make a motion to accept the application for the change of the zoning.
Mr. Chapelier, I'd like to go ahead and make a motion to recommend approval of the application.
All right, thank you. Is there a second?
Ralph Smithers, second.
All right, thank you. Would staff call roll?
Mr. Chapelier,
Yes.
Mr. Brubaker,
Yes.
Mr. Herskowitz,
Yes.
Mr. Harper,
Yes.
Mr. Paul,
Yes.
Mr. Sellers,
Yes.
and Mr. Smithers.
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you to our applicant for their presentation this evening. With that being said, is there any other business that we need to discuss this evening? Silence gives consent. No other business for this evening. Then I ask for a motion to adjourn.
Yeah, this is Jay. This is Jay. I'll make a motion to adjourn, but first I want to say hi to my old friend Bill Resch. Can I work that into my motion to adjourn?
Well, how much are you emphasizing old?
Thank you, Jay.
I hear him laughing.
All right. We got a long
I think we all appreciate Bill.
And again, welcome to Mr. Harper.
Thank you.
Okay, there's a motion. Yeah.
Second.
Okay, would staff call roll, please? Oh, we did.
We don't need a roll. We do not need a roll call to adjourn, so we are good to
Then I
go.
guess we just say goodbye.
Goodbye.
All right. Thanks,
you very much.
everyone.
Long evening.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great night.
Thank
You
you.
too.